high above the Dead Sea. It's a landscape that feels, well, kind of cursed. Just scorched earth, all cracked and salted, a place that life itself seems to have abandoned. It's right here, in this exact wilderness, that a story of terrifying belief and absolute apocalyptic certainty was written down and then hidden away for 2,000 years.
So where does our story begin? Well, like a lot of great mysteries, it all starts with a bit of luck. It's 1947, and a young shepherd out looking for a lost goat finds something that is going to change our understanding of history. These sealed clay jars, just tucked away in the dark of a cave. And inside, ancient scrolls. And that's really the question at the heart of our explainer today, isn't it? What was on these things? Because these weren't just any old scrolls. Oh no. This was the entire library of a lost community, a perfect window into a mindset that had been waiting with this chilling patience for the world to end.
So to really understand these scrolls, we have to understand the people who wrote them. They called themselves the Sons of Light, but their story is a dark one, born from this deep feeling of betrayal and exile. So let's rewind. Let's go all the way back to the 2nd century BC.
We know them today as the Essenes, and at their core, they were a breakaway Jewish sect who basically looked at the world around them, the politics, the religion, the whole shebang, and saw nothing but rot and corruption. They truly believed that they, and only they, were the last pure remnant of God's chosen people. So how did this all kick off? Well, it really boils down to a conflict between two main guys. On one side, you have the Essenes leader, who's only ever called the Teacher of Righteousness. He was probably a priest who got violently kicked out of the Jerusalem temple by a rival he called the wicked priest. Now, this wasn't just some political fight. For the teacher, this was a massive spiritual crisis. So he flees into the desert, not in defeat, but with this brand new revelation. The world is damned, and he's been chosen to lead the righteous few.
And you can see this mindset so clearly in their own writing. I mean, this quote from one of their key texts says it all. They defined themselves by what they weren't. They weren't just a new community. They were a separation from everybody else, who they literally called men of falsehood. I mean, that is the psychology of a group that is 100% certain it's right, and that the entire world is wrong.
Right, so you've decided the world is corrupt. Where do you go? Well, they chose one of the most brutal, inhospitable places on Earth, the Qumran wilderness, right by the Dead Sea. And this was no accident. For them, the desert was like a furnace, a place of purification, where they would get ready for the final judgment.
And life there, man, it was anything but a peaceful retreat. It was this iron, disciplined, structured existence. If you wanted to join, you had to prove yourself for years before you could even share a meal with them. They were obsessed with ritual purity, constantly bathing and cleansing themselves to avoid contamination from the outside world. And their days, they spent them in this almost manic study, convinced they were cracking secret codes in the scriptures that revealed the exact timeline for the apocalypse.
And you better believe the rules were brutal, which tells you everything about their society. A tiny offense, like falling asleep in a meeting, could get your food rations cut for a month. But slandering the community? That meant permanent expulsion, and that was basically a death sentence. To be cast out was to be spiritually and literally left to die. There are even reports that some ex-members actually starved to death because they'd rather do that than break their oaths by eating unclean food.
Okay, so this brings us to their most disturbing text of all. It's called the War Scroll, and it's not a metaphor. It is a literal, step-by-step military manual for the end of the world.
40. They believed the final war between good and evil, the Sons of Light versus the Sons of Darkness, was going to be a meticulously planned-out conflict that would last for 40 years. This wasn't some vague prophecy. It was a battle plan.
And get this war wasn't just going to be fought by men. The Essenes pictured a totally cosmic struggle. They, the Sons of Light, would march into battle shoulder to shoulder with legions of angels, fighting against all their human enemies and the demonic armies of Belial, the Prince of Darkness himself.
Just listen to the language from the scroll itself. This is not the language of peace or mercy or turning the other cheek. This is a violent, roaring cry for battle. It's about making plunder and conquest holy, all in the name of God.
I mean, that imagery is just, wow. It is so chilling. The crucial thing to understand here is that this community had made violence into a sacred act. They were just patiently waiting for the divine green light to go out and help annihilate everyone who was not one of them. So you have to wonder what happened to them. Did they get the apocalyptic war they dreamed of? Well, yes and no. Their ending and what they left behind is maybe the most surprising part of this whole story. You can see it right here. They did their thing in this isolated world for about 2 centuries. But then in 68 AD, the real world came crashing in. The Roman legions, the very sons of darkness they were preparing to fight, swept through the region and destroyed their settlement. But before they were wiped out, they did one last thing. They took all their sacred texts and hid them in the caves. And that's where they sat, in total silence, for almost 2,000 years.
And you know, that's maybe the creepiest part of this whole story. The dry desert air and those sealed clay jars preserved these scrolls almost perfectly. So when they were finally opened, it was like no time had passed at all. The jars had kept all of it, the darkness, the fury, the absolute certainty of the Essenes, perfectly fresh.
So, what are we supposed to take away from this? The Essenes themselves, they're gone. They're just a strange footnote in history. But what their scrolls reveal is this timeless and frankly unsettling human impulse. The urge, especially when things get bad, to just retreat from a world you see as corrupt. To draw a hard line in the sand between us and them, and to wait, or even hope, for some kind of final, violent cleansing. That impulse, as history shows us over and over again, never really dies.